My name's Hadrian Garrard. I'm the director of a company called Create London, and I'm here just to introduce Nick from We Are What You Do, who's going to talk in some detail about the project and take you through it. It's probably worth saying why I'm stood here first and Nick's coming up later. It's a funny thing really. I really like fried chicken, and I think Nick does too. And we both run organisations that deliver projects in communities in interesting ways, and we were both developing chicken projects in parallel, and we were both looking at the fact that there's so many fried chicken shops all over parts of East London, and they're so popular, but they're so bad for you. What can we do to try and make that situation better, or just have a think about it? And we were both talking to the Mayor of London's office, who said, actually you should speak to each other because you're developing a similar project. And so we are now working with We Are What You Do. I'm very proud to be working with them on this project. Create London, we normally do art projects. We don't do food projects very often. And all of our art projects are about getting architects and designers and artists outside of galleries and working with people that live in East London. Because the fact remains, if you live in East London, you're less likely to go to an art gallery than if you lived anywhere else in the UK, despite the fact that there's over 100 art galleries in East London and there's 14,000 artists living and working in the area. And we think that's not very good, and we try and do projects that connect people that live here to this really interesting cultural and creative community. And it's a bit like that with food. In London, there's about 30 restaurants opening every week at the moment. There are huge street food markets all over the city, and people seem really obsessive about trying the new Korean chicken burger, which has got this particular bit of lemongrass on it, or going to eat Polish meatballs out the back of a van on the South Bank. And that's brilliant, really exciting. But if you're a teenager and you've got 45 minutes for your lunch and you've got £3, you're quite likely to go down the road to the nearest place and eat some food that feels nice at the time, but might make you feel a bit sick in the afternoon. And if you keep eating it for 15 years, you're going to start looking different and getting a little bit ill. So we think that there should be more choice for young people and people that aren't living near the South Bank or cool areas of Hackney, and we're trying to get people like Giles, who's out there at the back cooking chicken, to come out to schools and to try and offer young people and other kinds of people that live locally something different and make it easy and affordable and really nice to eat. So it's not a complicated project in that sense, but this is the very beginning of it, and we'd like to see this grow. We'd like to see more and more people who are making lots of money at the weekend, doing festivals and selling food at the South Bank, so maybe spend a Wednesday afternoon at school or a Thursday and do something that doesn't cost people a lot of money, but that offers them something really, really tasty. And I think that if you eat really well, everything feels a bit better and your studying is better and things tend to work better. So I think it's really, really important and hopefully quite a simple thing to do. So, thank you, Nick, and thank you, We Are What You Do, for persuading the guy outside to come and cook chicken. And it's going to be here for a month, and Nick is going to talk to you with pictures, and he knows a lot more about the project than I do. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks, Hadrian. It always takes one person at the start of a project to believe in it, to make it possible, and Hadrian was that person. And that's why we're here able to launch this interesting experiment. So thank you for the introduction and thank you for your support. And I'll tell you a little bit more about how the project came about, what it consists of and what we're hoping to get out of it. I'll come back to St Angela's, but to start with a massive thank you to St Angela's for hosting us, for all their work supporting the project. It's as much the students' idea as ours. And Fidelma Boyd, the deputy head, has just been amazingly supportive. Every project needs a Fidelma, which is why we keep on working with St Angela's over and over again. So I run We Are What We Do, and what we do is we design useful, desirable products and services that can help make communities stronger, healthier, and more sustainable. So the idea is rather having this separation between stuff that you should like and does good, and stuff that you do like and maybe doesn't do so much good. We want to collapse that distinction and create stuff that people can love, but also has a positive impact on the health, strength and sustainability of their communities. So today we're launching a modest pilot, an experiment which aims to put a new service into Forest Gate, which is trying to serve tasty, cheap, popular fast food. And through this, we want to prove that fast food doesn't have to be inevitably unhealthy, and it doesn't have to be having the kind of impact that fast food normally does have. And all the students that we've spoken to in St Angela's and St Bonaventure's in different schools and groups across Newham, they agree with us. So there is an appetite. I can't help but use that pun all the time, I'm going to stop. But there is an appetite for a different type of fast food and different types of food services. So why here and why this project? I'm not going to talk a lot about the kind of obesity epidemic and those kind of things, but everyone understands the kind of problems that poor diets are creating for the health of our communities. Obesity rates, particularly amongst young people, particularly in poor areas, are dramatic. The costs of that for the quality of life and for health services are equally dramatic. It's been described as an epidemic, and there are a lot of people trying to do a lot of things about it. And when it comes to designing different solutions and different ways of intervening around this problem, it's acknowledged that there are many contributing factors, from the level of activity through to food cooked at home, through to where we found ourselves, fast food, and the food available and the food that is prevalent and ubiquitous in environments like this. And you can't help but, I mean, we've been working in Newham a long time. We were founded a mile away out of Community Links, and have done a lot of work in Newham, but we were still surprised by the prevalence of fast food shops, and particularly chicken shops in Newham and Forest Gate when we started working on it. This is a little map of where we are. A lot of you may have arrived somewhere near the top at Forest Gate Station, and walked down Wood Grange Road and Upton Lane and walk past Romford Road. You will have walked past or near a whole load of primary and secondary schools, 9 primary and secondary schools, a really kind of almost uniquely dense patch of primary and secondary schools. And there's about 4,000 school students coming through this area every day to study. You will also have walked past, on your way to St Angela's, over 30 fast food outlets on that strip, those roads, which is, and you know, it's not an accident that there is a unique conurbation of fast food where there are so many young people coming through every day who want a cheap, tasty meal. And this is something that's replicated all across East London and all across the UK. And it's at its kind of most intense where there are lots and lots of schools and where incomes are a little bit lower. And they are the average meal, as we probably already know, is incredibly dense in the things that we shouldn't be eating a lot of. So a standard meal of 3 pieces of chicken, a drink and chips is providing about 70% of calories for the day and over half of fat and salt. So it doesn't take a genius to work out that you're going to quickly slip over daily allowances if you eat even a small amount of this stuff. And that aggregates into a pretty dramatic effect on diets over a pretty small period of time. And we're not actually here to point the finger at chicken shops and fast food restaurants for reasons that I'll talk about more. But there's no doubt that there is, as well as the health impacts, there are a whole series of other impacts that these businesses often have which aren't normally particularly positive. Their sourcing standards tend to be pretty low because they're having to buy incredibly low-cost goods because they're selling things at an incredibly low margin. They are regarded as sources of antisocial behaviour, often kind of lambasted by neighbours and local people sometimes. They don't tend to have particularly good employment models or training opportunities. They tend to be seen as generating litter. They tend to be having hygiene problems. But, and it is a massive but and a really important but, they tick all the boxes that need to be ticked to be a successful business in an area like this and areas all over the UK. They're popular because they're cheap, they're convenient, they're one of the few third spaces essentially between, particularly for young people, between school and home. They meet a need. And that's unequivocal. And we can close them down, and there maybe shouldn't be quite so many, and councils are doing interesting things to stop there being so many. But we can close them down, but you're not going to take away the need. Or you can try and keep students out of them, but you're not going to stop them wanting all of the things that these places offer. And they are also, it's not the result of a kind of big corporate machine while these shops are here. They're pretty organic. 4/5 of the market for fast food is independence. They are starting up as a natural response from small business people to a local need, and they're thriving and growing during recession. They're paying rents. They're growing at about 10% a year. So these are successful small local businesses that are meeting a local need. But again, it's unmistakable the connection between the offering of these businesses and the ill health of the local community. So what are some of where does our kind of solution fit into a whole series of other responses? And what kind of other work is being done, and what is our kind of relationship with that work? So obviously better school food, work from people like Jamie Oliver and many others to improve the standard of school food. Lots of public health awareness campaigns to try and increase the levels of understanding about what represents healthy choices. Getting salads and healthy foods on menus in fast food restaurants. Physical activity campaigns. All of this is very important, and we recognise and support the role that all of these play, and work with lots of partners that have made a lot of progress with them. But you also have to acknowledge the limitations of some of these interventions when you're talking about environments like this. So, for example, school food represents about 15% of the kind of market for school lunches, and obviously packed lunches and local kind of fast food outlets taken some big chunks of the rest of that. And you're also, as Fidel will attest, students are always going to find ways to nip out between lessons before, after school, on free periods to go to local fast food restaurants, as the rest of us all do as well. It's not a question of closing down the market so it's just kind of fixed within schools. That's never going to be possible. So better school foods has a really big role to play, but it's not enough to just focus on what's going within the school building. Secondly, awareness campaigns. Now, again, really, really important that levels of understanding increase every year about healthy options. But as most of our work is founded on, there is a massive gap between intentions and behaviours. And the work on public awareness is trying to affect people's intentions, so they want to go out and make healthier choices. But there is a massive gap, and the power of context is overwhelming when it comes to that battle between intentions and actual behaviours. And most of the time, intentions lose. So yes, we have to change people's intentions, but unless we change the environments in which the behaviours are taking place, then it's never going to be a battle that we win. And then connected to that, the arrival of many more healthy options within shops, fruit and vegetable salads on menus. Again, incredibly important that if you want healthy options, as you're walking down these streets, you can find them. But again, there are some problems and limitations with that. Explicitly healthy options create this kind of divide between normal food and healthy food, which is an alternative. And I don't know about you, but when I was 16, I didn't really want to do alternative things. I wanted to do what everyone else was doing and eat locally relevant food. And I didn't want to be the person ordering the salad. And that's, from everything we've looked at, that's pretty standard. Secondly, it's actually really, really difficult when you're surrounded by all of these options to pick the healthy option. And there was a really interesting piece of research about the effect that it has. So essentially within this experiment, they made people pick celery when they were surrounded by loads of kind of chocolate and fast food options. And the effort of resisting that temptation had this effect called ego depletion, which basically means it's kind of mentally tiring to choose the healthy option. And then when they went after this and did mental tests, they performed worse on the mental tests because they were essentially mentally drained. So although it is much better for students to be coming back full of healthy food, it's tiring having to turn down all of these options. And I like an interesting kind of counterintuitive idea that it's kind of bad for their schoolwork to have to spend all their mental energy fighting off fast food options. There is also this, there's lots and lots of interesting behavioural effects of explicitly healthy foods, but essentially this type a dichotomy between stuff that I want and stuff that I feel like I should want is problematic. And a big part of our work on boxed chicken is about trying to collapse that and have it that people, want something that it incidentally has a whole series of kind of healthy outcomes and behaviours attached to it. And then finally, the activity programs, again, very important for loads and loads of reasons, and not just around obesity, but around lots and lots of other health benefits, social benefits, self-esteem benefits. And things like walk to school programs are positive, effective, and should be continued. But it takes 13 hours to burn off the calories in a Domino's pizza. So let's not pretend that the battle between calorie-dense food and exercise is a fair one. The calories contained in these foods are so toxic, essentially, that they can't be battled by exercise. And you also get that problematic thing of people offsetting exercise often with. So yes, physical activity is important, but it only plays a relatively small role in the battle against obesity. So what are we doing? What's our contribution? What impact do we think we could have? Boxed chicken will just be a very small, modest intervention in a world with far, far more unhealthy alternatives. But essentially what we're trying to do is show that you can create something that is familiar and feels normal, doesn't feel healthy and alternative, is equally tasty and popular, but has considerably better health outcomes, where all the ingredients in the meat is better sourced, where the standards of employment and training are much higher, where the impact on local litter is much lower. And the way, and you'll meet Giles and experience his service and his delicious food in a moment, but essentially that menu contains about 1/10 of the saturated fat, well under 1/5 of the salt, and under 1/2 of the calories. So the health difference is substantial, and the work that we've done with students at St Angela's and St Bons has shown that it can be equally popular. So essentially what this experiment is trying to do is have something within the same guise as normal fast food, but dramatically different outcomes. And tick all the boxes that we want to be ticking to have a good social business running within a community around health and employment and litter and all the rest of it, but also tick all of the boxes which make fast food so popular and successful in the first place. And we're not claiming for a moment that it's going to be really easy. And this equation, this kind of killer equation of being healthy and popular and financially sustainable is not easy, which is why you can buy a fried chicken meal for £2.50 and why people running those businesses have got tiny, tiny margins. So we're not pretending that this is going to be interesting, but we do think that it's worth experimenting with Giles through boxed chicken over the next few months and in many different guises in many different communities. Because if we can prove that you can combine these three things together, then we could have something that could be near or around schools in communities like this, all over East London, all over London, all over the UK. We know that if we are able to gather some evidence about this, prove that this model can work, that the problem exists in many, many different places in a very similar way. The number of fast food outlets across the East London, across the UK are enormous, and they're growing at 10% a year, and becoming part of that market, trying to cut into that market with a very different purpose and a very different approach feels like a very worthwhile experiment. So what are we trying to get out of it? We're trying to get out some evidence, essentially, that shows that you can be healthy, popular, and close to financially sustainable, and particularly around financial sustainability, to experiment with different ways of supporting businesses like this. So we'll find out a bit more about how sustainable Giles' business could be within this environment over this period of time, and how else could we make it more sustainable? Can this trailer be in different places at different times, serving different audiences at different prices? Can it serve different things to people with different levels of income? And then from that basis to do this in more boroughs, to do this with more partners, We've had a very strong, positive relationship with Newham Borough Council and have been developing other relationships in Tower Hamlets and Hackney and Walthamstow and a whole series of other places. So there is, again, I can't think of a different word, there is an appetite amongst the councils in London to take imaginative approaches like this one. And there is also a really strong interest from the catering industry, from restaurants, from chefs like Giles, to be in these kind of environments, and not just to be serving people in richer parts of London or in festivals or the rest of it, to actually be in these communities serving a need. So there's a combination of lots of different sources of enthusiasm and interest and energy for this. And there are lots and lots of schools, as Fidelma and St Angela's and St Bond's have shown. There are lots and lots of schools with a similar interest, that they know their kids are going out and finding food locally, and that it's not just deep fried chicken. Similarly, amongst parents, they want to know that there are other options locally. So yeah, we're going to be working with all of our council and borough partners, with Public Health England, who have helped us design the kind of nutritional standards for this. There are networks of street food vendors like Kitchenette and food hawkers who again have got experience at supporting businesses locally, food businesses locally, and incubating them and helping them set up and thrive. There's some really interesting work being done at the school food plan, at the GLA. There's lots of people who want to do things differently, and we kind of feel like we can tap into all of that. So before you do what you came to do, which is taste Charles's delicious food, just a couple of very quick thank yous. Again, St Angela's and Bonds, this is a pretty impressive establishment, as I'm sure you'll agree, and the support we've had from students and teachers has been fantastic. Newham Youth Council as well have played an important role in developing the menu and the brand and all the rest of it. The council, as I said, particularly David Christie and Ellie Robinson, have been hugely supportive, and whatever the Daily Mail says, councils are full of people who want to do things creatively, imaginatively, and have got big ambitions. And we found that full force in the Borough of Newham. The GLA and Jonathan Pauling, who made the initial introductions, a big thank you to them. Yeah, I mean, most of all, for me, I think my team have given everything for the challenges of doing something relatively modest, like setting up a small mobile food business in Newham, have been kind of much bigger than we'd expected. And that's involved a huge amount of hard work from the WeArgue team and help by the Create team. So if this does become something which there are thousands of all over the country, then that hard work has been a massive, massive part of that. So a big thank you to you for braving the weather. Our furthest visitor is from Japan. I know you didn't come specifically for this, but it was the main reason of the trip, I think, probably. But yeah, thank you for coming out. Now we're going to let you enjoy the chicken. And if you want to be involved, we would love to talk to you and explore ways of working together and, yeah, hopefully make the most of our little experiment. Thank you very much.